opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
There's a need for a new world order, but it has different characteristics in different parts of the world.
The affirmative task we have now is to actually create a new world order.
A world in which there is the very real prospect of a new world order.
It's about the future of Europe and a new world order.
After 1989, President Bush said, and it's a phrase that I often use myself, that we needed a new world order.
And the hope that each of us has to build a new world order.
The pieces are in flux. Soon they will settle again. Before they do, let us reorder this world around us.
So that the problem of the Bush presidency will be the emergence of a new international order.
Within the next 4 years, we will see the emergence of a new international order.
The beginning of a new international order.
But today, with Asia already outproducing Europe, India and China are clearly becoming part of our new order.
So, in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, a new world is emerging. It is a new world order with significantly different and radically new challenges.
I think his task will be to develop an overall strategy for America in this period when really a new world order can be created. It's a great opportunity. It isn't just a crisis.
That this crisis, in the way that has developed, will require some kind of a world governance.
Good evening, everybody. President Obama and British Prime Minister Gordon today calling for a new world order to tackle our global economic crisis.
And the president outlined his vision of a new world order in which the U.S. would participate fully.
We've got to give them a stake in creating the kind of world order that I think all of us would like to see.
So I see a world order in the future with a multipolar world order.
I think a new world order is emerging, and with it the foundations of a new and progressive era of international cooperation. We have resolved that from today we will together manage the process of globalization to secure responsibility from all and fairness to all.
And one of the ways it will drive the change is through global governance and global agreements.
But in a globalized economy, we are going to have to take global responsibilities, and there is going to have to be some semblance of global governance.
Never before has a new world order had to be assembled from so many different perceptions or on so global a scale. Nor has any previous order had to combine the attributes of the historic balance of power system with global democratic opinion and the exploding technology of the contemporary period.
There also exists an extraordinary opportunity to form for the first time in history a truly global society.
Well, during the conflict with Saddam Hussein, which he handled so superbly in a short-term sense, but he kept talking about a new world order. And then President Bush, at the end of that war, promised he would give 4 graduation addresses, 4 commencement addresses, describing that new world order and what America's role was going to be in it. Turned out he gave one of those addresses and canceled the other 3 and talked about something else. That's because they weren't ready yet.
That in fact we're all going to have to give up a little bit of our sovereignty in order to make the world work.
And I strongly believe India will be a central actor in the new world order.
And this present window of opportunity during which a truly peaceful and interdependent world order might be built will not be here for too long. Already there are powerful forces at work that threaten to destroy all of our hopes and efforts to erect an enduring structure of global cooperation.
Are you optimistic a global system can happen?
from what we've heard so far.
It could happen, and in fact it's in the works.
But sir, just one thing, we could go on about how your family committed all these acts against society, but we just want to let you know the New World Order has no legitimacy, and that we as a people are not afraid, and we are waking up to the robber barons and the big banksters who are looting this economy with the Federal Reserve.
Well,
we just want to let you know the New World Order has no legitimacy, and that we as a people are not afraid, and we are waking up to the robber barons and the big banksters who are looting this economy.
We fight for this new world order for the democratic countries.
Thinking, these two circles are not equal. I repeat, these two circles are not equal. One is in fact larger than the other. What I need you to do is determine which one that is. So, please raise your hand if you believe the blue circle is larger than the red. All right. Please raise your hand if you believe the red circle is larger than the blue. All right, very good. Now, before I said anything about these circles, what was your first instinct? Equal, right? Because they look equal. And the reason why they look equal is because, in fact, they are equal. These two circles are identical. Yet I got just about every one of you to raise your hand and say that they're not. So what do we learn? That you can be manipulated like that to believe in something that goes against your natural instinct. Just imagine as a child you're taught that the blue circle is larger than the red. If you say it enough times, you convince yourself that's the truth. If you're told the lie enough times, it becomes part of your reality. And if enough people are taught that lie, that the blue circle is larger than the red, well, now it becomes part of the culture. And if that culture then passes that misinformation along to the next generation, well, now it becomes tradition.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to News from the Pew, where we take current issues that are going on inside and outside of the church, and I find three of the smartest people on the side of the road picking up trash and bring them in to give you guys their opinions on
We're all
that.
ran out of gas.
That's right. I am your humble host, Rick Barrett, the Armed Catholic, and I am joined by Steve Cunningham, Mr. John Arrington, and Ryan Grant for this week. Mr. Fawaz cannot be with us because he's taking care of some family members. We'll look forward to having him join us next week. So let's dive right into this. The things we're going to be talking about, first one is Ukraine, because that is the newest narrative that the legacy media has decided to push on us in regards to the blame for everything. In fact, Peter Doocy this afternoon confronted Jen Psaki, asking her, is Putin just going to be blamed for everything from now until the midterms? And of course, her condescending wine box tone, she said, essentially yes. But the Ukraine is the issue. So it looks like the whole thing of trust us, do you trust me, or what your lying eyes tell you, comes back into the fold as far as biological weapons and BioLabs. And last week, Steve and company brought up the fact that there are BioLabs in the Ukraine, and everybody was like, whatever, dude. I don't think there really is, except that there is. So I think we have a video for that.
And Ukraine abuts Poland, then he's going to have a NATO country abutting him. So if that's what he doesn't want, then isn't he going to just have to keep going until he runs out of NATO countries?
I guess I should say it again. He has no interest in crossing the Dnieper and heading west to the Polish border. I think you're going to find from these negotiations he's quite willing to neutralize that territory on the Austrian or the Finnish model. Right now, Russia already touches Estonia and part of Latvia. White Russia, of course, touches Lithuania. He's not interested in going to war with us, and he has an army that's too small for that purpose. And he knows it. His economy is smaller than that of South Korea's. So this is not something that he's looking for. We're imputing to him things that he does not want to do in our usual effort to demonize him and his country. We need to remember that Ukraine is fourth from the bottom of 158 countries in the world as corrupt. Russia is perhaps 3 or 4 places above them. This is not the liberal democracy, the shining example that everyone says it is. Far from it. Mr. Zelensky has jailed journalists and his political opposition. I think we need to stay out of it. The American people think we should stay out of it. The Europeans think we should stay out of it. And we should stop shipping weapons and encouraging Ukrainians to die in what is a hopeless endeavor.
So when you say stay out of it, you mean no sanctions, no military aid, just let Russia take the portion of Ukraine they want to take?
Yes, absolutely. I see no reason why we should fight with the Russians over something that they have been talking about for years. We simply chose to ignore it. And more important, the population there is indistinguishable from their own. You know, the thing that's so disturbing is that on the one hand, we will not send our forces to fight, but we are urging Ukrainians to die pointlessly in a fight they can't win. So I would say another 10 days, this should be completely over. But the question is, what is it that Zelensky is going to do? The Russians have made it very clear what they want is a neutral Ukraine. This could have ended days ago if he accepted that. And then they can adjust the borders. But the eastern part of Ukraine is firmly in Russian hands. But again, the Russians are not seizing territory. They're destroying Ukrainian forces. That's their focus.
Colonel, it sounds like you don't approve of Zelensky's stand.
Oh, I think Zelensky is a puppet. And he is putting huge numbers of his own population at unnecessary risk. And quite frankly, most of what comes out of Ukraine is debunked as lies within 24 to 48 hours. The notions of taking and retaking airfields, all of this is nonsense. It hasn't happened.
He's not a hero? I mean, he's standing up for himself and his own people? You don't think he's a hero?
No, I do not. I don't see anything heroic about the man. And I think the most heroic thing that he can do right now is to come to terms with reality. Neutralize Ukraine. This is not a bad thing. A neutral Ukraine would be good for us as well as for Russia. It would create the buffer that, frankly, both sides want.
Yeah, but it'd be bad
but
for
he's,
Biden.
I think, being told to hang on and try to drag this out, which is tragic for the people who have to live through this.
I'm inclined to disagree with you, but, you know, we see how this works out. Come on, Douglas.
I disagree.
Tonight, if you had told us just 4 days ago that the Biden administration was funding secret biolabs in Ukraine, of all places, we would not have believed you. Yeah, I don't think we're going to put that on TV. No thanks. Then if you told us that not only did the administration fund these secret biolabs in Ukraine, but that they then failed to secure the deadly contents of those labs before the Russian invasion, an invasion they knew was coming, an invasion they helped encourage, if you had told us that 4 days ago, we'd have dismissed you as a nut. It was just too preposterous. We would not want anything to do with a story like that. There was no way it could be true. It's too far out. In any case, we already knew for a fact that that story was false. How do we know that? Because we read USA Today, America's newspaper. Within hours of the Russian invasion, USA Today published a rebuttal to all those crazies who are yammering on about secret Ukrainian biolabs. Here was the headline. Fact check! False claim of U.S. biolabs in Ukraine tied to Russian disinformation campaign. So if you look carefully at the story, and we did, because we were interested, you notice that this fact check was sourced to Ukrainian government unnamed officials and then Biden State Department officials. So these were not exactly objective sources on this subject, but still, the story seemed definitive. It was totally emphatic. Quote, Russia has teamed up with China to further amplify the false claim of U.S. labs in Ukraine. Okay, USA Today says it's Russian disinformation. Maybe it is. On to the next story. But the fact checks didn't stop. That was weird. We kept seeing the same fact check again and again. It was almost like, despite endless official clarifications, some people refused to believe the Biden administration. They preferred Russian propaganda instead. And we assume they must be QAnon members. We assume that because Foreign Policy magazine told us that. According to Foreign Policy, QAnon, whatever that is, was frantically disseminating, quote, false claims of U.S. biowarfare labs in Ukraine. Those labs obviously didn't exist. It was all just another lie from the Russians, who lie for a living. Then the European Union weighed in, throwing its credibility behind the same claim. These are conspiracy theories, the EU told us. They're lies spread by Putin. An EU spokesman then reminded us that, quote, the credibility of information provided by the Kremlin is in general very doubtful and low. And that was good to know. Quote, Russian disinformation has a track record of promoting manipulative narratives about biological weapons and alleged secret labs. Yeah, we're not going to do a segment about secret labs in Ukraine. The last thing we want to do on this show is traffic in Russian disinformation spread by QAnon, so we took a pass on that story. And that's where things stood until yesterday, when we happened to tune in to a hearing of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Toria Nuland was testifying, so we were interested. Nuland's one of the people who brought us the Iraq War, never apologized for that, and kept getting promoted, because that's how D.C. works. Toria Nuland is now Joe Biden's Undersecretary of State in charge of Ukraine, and she knows a lot about Ukraine. In 2014, Toria Nuland engineered a coup in Ukraine, in the name of democracy, of course. So she is a highly informed source about Ukraine. So she was having this colloquy with Senator Marco Rubio of Florida during her testimony. And at one point, Rubio took a tack that we were not expecting at all. He asked Nuland if Ukraine had biological weapons. We'd never imagined Ukraine would have biological weapons. Why would Ukraine have bioweapons? Well, it seemed like a pretty strange question. But it wasn't half as shocking as the answer he got. Watch what Toria Nuland said.
Does Ukraine have chemical or biological weapons?
Ukraine has biological research facilities, which, in fact, we are now quite concerned Russian forces may be seeking to gain control of. So we are working with the Ukrainians on how they can prevent any of those research materials from falling into the hands of Russian forces should they approach.
Oh. Does Ukraine have biological weapons? Ukraine has biological research facilities. What? You mean secret biolabs? Like the secret biolabs Ukraine definitely doesn't have? Ukraine has those? Yes, it does. And not only does Ukraine have secret biolabs, Toria Nuland said, whatever they're doing in those labs is so dangerous and so scary that she is, quote, quite concerned that the so-called research material inside those biolabs might fall into the hands of Russian forces. Try not to use profanity on the air to describe our reaction. Our jaws drop. Let's leave it there. Under oath in an open committee hearing, Toria Nuland just confirmed that the Russian disinformation they've been telling us for days is a lie and a conspiracy theory and crazy and immoral to believe is in fact totally and completely true. Whoa. You don't hear things like that every day in Washington. Talk about a showstopper. And a dozen questions instantly jump to mind. What exactly are they doing in these secret Ukrainian biolabs? Ukraine is the poorest country in Europe. It's hardly a hotbed of biomedical research. We're assuming these weren't pharmaceutical labs, probably not developing new leukemia drugs. From your answer, Toria Nuland, we would assume, because you all but said it, that there is a military application to this research, that they were working on bioweapons. Again, your answer suggests that. Why would we fund something like that in Ukraine? And why didn't you secure the contents of these biolabs before the Russians arrived, as you knew they would? And then why did you go out of your way to lie to the American public about all of this? If the, quote, research materials in these labs were to escape somehow, and you seem very concerned about that, what would be the effect on Ukraine and then on the rest of the world? How can we prepare for the consequences of that, this thing that you're worried about? Shouldn't we be preparing? As it turns out, we've just spent the last 2 years living with a pathogen that began in another foreign biolab funded by the United States government secretly. So this question is on our mind. It seems fair. Now, that's some of what we would have asked if we were U.S. senators, which we're not. Yes, there's time limit be damned, because this is kind of important. But Rubio did not ask those questions. Instead, he changed the subject and told us, once again, that Vladimir Putin is bad. Watch.
If there's a biological or chemical weapon incident or attack inside of Ukraine, is there any doubt in your mind that 100% it would be the Russians that would be behind it?
There is no doubt in my mind, Senator, and it is classic Russian technique to blame on the other guy what they're planning to do themselves.
Okay.
Give us the gate key.
I have no gate key. Basic. Take his arms off. Oh, you mean this gate key?
Fantastic. A lot to unpack there. about the Ukraine. Let's get to the most shocking one first, is that Catholic in name only Marco Rubio probably didn't get the message to not ask about the chemical or biological weapons. Either he did or she got the she didn't get the thing, like, you can lie because it's okay. Because we cannot confirm the fact that there are indeed biological weapons or biological labs in the Ukraine, which is once again just another black eye to the to those who try to say just trust the government and shut up and everything will be fine. In fact,
Fact checked false, which is to say true.
you mean yes. So Ryan, you actually lost the coin toss. You come up first on
Oh,
everything this week.
well, there
So
we go.
let's throw it to you. Go ahead.
Okay.
BioLabs, just the BioLabs.
Yeah, just the BioLabs. I can't profess to know a whole ton about the situation there, but it's just as Tucker said. You mean to say for weeks you've been coming out, we've got intel that Putin's going to do this, we've got intel that Putin's going to do that, and yet you don't do anything to secure these biolabs. Now you're worried that these biolabs, the Russians are going to get whatever it is we're working on there. And to me, maybe it's just my conspiratorial mindset, but we're just setting up a false flag altogether on in the future that will then again be blamed on Russia, just as everything else has been blamed on Russia for how many years now, since going back to 2016 or earlier. And it's why are these biolabs there to begin with? And the same thing we could ask, for example, the Wuhan Institute of Virology, which is set up in, what do you know? And then that's where there's ground zero for the you know what, that we can't unspecified virus of unspecified origin. To me, it's just setting up that false flag narrative. So look, the Russians got our biolab facility and they've released or they've weaponized, because we're the good guys, we never do anything wrong. They've weaponized all this. Now, if we just go back to the creation of bioweapons, which have been going on since, the guys who were doing it in Nazi Germany were brought over in Operation Paperclip to do it over here. And the excuse has always been, oh, we need to work on these bioweapons because if we don't, the Soviets are going to do it. And then they're going to, so we got to have things to counter their bioweapons, even though there's no evidence they were ever advanced enough to do any of that. But we made it. And then the same thing now with the Chinese. Oh, the Russians, the Chinese are working on this. So ever since the 90s, that's been the line. So we have to work on ever increasing, more hazardous, more destructive, more deadly bioweapons as we go. And it's like, but Russia and China did not have the ability to create these types of weapons. We did. And now those things, of course, exist. And with the NIH, you can see there's a sharing of things of this sort. I wish I had the docs, and it's going to have to be relegated to I'm putting it out there, and you can believe it if you want or disbelieve it, because I can't find the original news story. But in 2014, there was a BBC News article that I read. I'm sure it was BBC, of a researcher funded by NIH who was trying to find a way to overcome humanity's resistance to the common cold. What? You're trying to find a way to undermine our body's ability to deal with the common cold just for science, just for research. I mean, the only reason you do that is if you want to wipe out the human race, which actually these people want to do, because their father is somebody down below where it's hot. So why would you? There is no reason why you would ever want to do that unless you had a nefarious motive. I'm sorry, don't give me, scientific research just to find out. Because what's going to happen when you create something? And this is why science needs ethics. Science, or actually, I shouldn't use the word ethics because they use that word in a very perverted sense. Science needs morality. It needs philosophy of science. It needs a guiding view of natural law and moral law, God's law, to say, we need to do things in accord with what is morally right and not just because we can do it or somebody else might do it. And that's the problem with all these kind of things. And the bioweapons are the same type of thing. So then and of course, we've had Bill Gates talking about the next pandemic because they know another pandemic is coming out. And it's going to be, and this one's going to be for real. People are going to die. I think that's kind of my prediction with it. What better way to do that than to blame somebody else for it? See, it's all because of Russia that now you got to wear masks forever and get your 14 jabs.
That's right. That's right. So Jonathan, classic Russian technique. The way that she got caught literally with their hand in the cookie jar. And we have politicians who think they're smarter than us. They think they're all better than us, all the virtuals, all the elites, even this undersecretary of getting bagels for everybody else. You know, she thinks she's genius because she's got 9 degrees from 17 different cat universities. But when they get caught in the lie, John, oh boy, is it fun to watch.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add on that specific subject is that I think I understand why she told a version of the truth, or there's this great line. Well, yeah, or as there's this great line from Don Quixote where he's talking about one of the romances, and he says, is it más verdadero or menos mentiroso? Is it more truthy, or more truthful, or less lying? She lied a little bit less than normal to take Don Quixote route. But she did it because she knows the people she's working with. She knows how ruthless they are, and she's so, as Tucker likes to say a lot, she's so unimpressive that she knows how quickly she could be dumped otherwise. So she can't open herself up to, something that would clearly just be all right, you lied about this, boop, you're done, like a Dr. Evil sort of thing. And in fact, it's just on this same sort of unpacking of former conspiracy theories. It's one thing I was telling a group yesterday that was talking about their ideas about why is Russia doing this now? They're trying to corner the U.S. And I'm convinced actually of the contrary, that there's they were saying they think Russia is trying to eventually unveil the Apollo hoax and so many other things that the U.S. has lied about with their military over the past 60, 70 years or so. I don't think that's their rationale at all. I much more think that General McGregor is spot on, because all of the folks that are these World Economic Forum global leaders, that they are in the know about the lies, I think, to a great extent. It's the one leverage they have on one another, and what doesn't allow them to be, canceled quite so easily. So no, Putin's not out to try to expose the U.S.'s lies. I mean, all it takes is even on Google, I think you could find just about anything you need to, call out the hoax that was the Apollo missions and so many other things in a heartbeat. So it's not that you could have figured out the BioLabs last week like we did. We're not super geniuses here. We happen to do a little.
You are.
No, we do a little bit of digging. We use DuckDuckGo. That's our secret. We don't use Google. So I don't know. It's interesting that finally it's coming out, and I'm praying for Tucker every day and night that he's not off, because he is the most watched on TV. So it's somewhat encouraging in the midst of all this really bad news that he admits, well, I would have called this a conspiracy theory 2 days ago, or even yesterday. And now there's a change in the paradigm. So will that will that red pill anybody else? I don't know, but it gives me a little bit of hope. I'm somewhat more joyful today after having watched that. So that's what I have to say.
So Steve, after you watched Tucker, did you take down all your Ukrainian flags? Because we know that you were standing with Ukraine very, very forcefully from the beginning.
Man,
yeah, you called it last week. You did. You had the.
Well, it wasn't me. It was the expose. And like Tucker, somebody sent me that info on a Signal chat, and I kind of poo-pooed it, saying, I don't want that QAnon. I literally said what Tucker said to them. And then I was watching a couple other links that most people don't know about, like the expose in the United Kingdom. And they were the ones that had the same thing that he was talking about with the map of the BioLabs, map of where they're bombing. And it's the same thing. You look deeper, there's actually stories of people, Russians around the border getting sick with weird sicknesses. So there's something to that. And let me share the screen from the expose once again. Where is it? Right here. This was posted yesterday. Russia to the U.S. We found your biological weapons. This is not going to be good for the U.S., even though they did say that they found that the scientists have basically immunity somehow.
Well, it's also funny that, just real quick, that Saki either yesterday was like, oh, well, by the way, the Russians are going to do some stuff with chemical weapons soon. After this, they're like, yeah, we have your chemical weapons. Like, well, they're going to do something. Don't look over here. Look over there.
And look, U.S. funding $11.8 million to BioLabs. And there's something like 140 of them across the world, as even Tucker was saying. So was this pseudo pandemic, as the one book is entitled, which you should get, came from a lab. If not, it at least came from another lab, Fort Detrick, that no one talks about, where those people that were getting sick many times with all kinds. It's a biolab that there. I mean, we have it here. I mean, University of North Carolina weaponized the SARS and went to Detrick, and all of a sudden you got these guys sick during the military games in Wuhan. So there's a lot of connection here. And then again, no one wanted to talk about that. Because they didn't want to believe that Putin could be doing something that he might not like his people getting sick on. And there's a video of all these blue and yellows. I don't know if you saw that yet. I put it on Clown Planet. How blue and yellow was the key thing during, well, obviously for Ukraine, but it's a very key thing during the push for the Rona. Everything you saw was blue gloves, yellow background, blue this, yellow background, yellow background, blue this. It's funny how these things, the scam quit one day, the next day, a war. And also Australia is underwater because they geoengineered the weather, and now they got too much water coming down because they were trying to make more water. And so somehow playing God doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, I thought everybody was University of Michigan fans. That's what I thought for a little while. I was like, wow, there's a lot of support lately. Either that, for everybody loves West Virginia, which I do. My West Virginia people love you. But a lot of support for that until
there's another article I just saw pop up that seems interesting. I'm going to share the screen here in a minute if I can do it right.
By the way, while he's doing that, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. News from the Pew, so we can grow the audience, folks.
Here we go. Is this visible?
Yes.
Could a small nuclear war reverse global warming? And so, granted, it's in the Huffington Post, but it's sourcing from National Geographic and other places.
Hold on, wait a minute. Didn't we all make fun of Trump when he wanted to nuke hurricanes like 3 years ago?
Right.
So
this is the next thing. This is an older piece, but it's interesting that it's out there. It would be interesting to see if this comes out. Scientists from NASA and a number of other institutions have recently been modeling the effects of a war involving 100 Hiroshima-level bombs, or 0.03% of the world's current nuclear arsenal. The research suggests 5 million metric tons of black carbon would be swept up into the lowest portion of the atmosphere. The result, according to NASA climate models, could actually be global cooling.
Because you won't get the sun.
So this actually sources from National Geographic. I'm not sure. Yeah,
that's right.
And so, and that's, but anyway, so that's an older bit. It's from 2011, but I thought that was interesting given we're all talking about nuclear war. And it's like, I think when they are ready to pull the trigger on it, when the bankers got enough money and they got their contingency plans, that will be greenlit. They'll greenlight all the people they've been holding back on this thing. And then you will have a nuclear war, and which will, block out the sun, eliminate our ability to produce anything, and of course leave them in control of everything. So
they all have those we always saw those articles shared around the interwebs about the emergency or the special island that all the elites have a plane that they can get to, or whatever the case may be. And I mean, if you even look at that terrible movie 2012, when the world was going to end, what they do, they built ships, and they're like, oh, all the rich people go on the ships. And even the people that were working on the ships, when the water was coming in, they're like, "No, you can't come in. Just make sure you weld that. Make sure you weld that before the water comes through."
Which people who are awake to these things that are building up the infrastructure for the technocratic tyranny.
That $5 million that Buttigieg put out for
or whatever. I mean, the people in private business and the tech people, if they are worried, they should be paying attention to things like that, because they'll be the ones booted off. Yeah. And they're thinking they'll get some special treatment because I'm building up the technocratic structure here, in all the tech world or everywhere else. And they won't. They and their kids will be subjected to the same tyranny. I liken it to like the cops in Ottawa, like your Royal Mounted Police Chief is basically, you're creating the tyrannical state that your kids and grandkids will live under. How do you feel about yourself now? You're not helping anything.
No, not at all.
They don't want nuke war anyways. It doesn't go with the Great Reset agenda. The nuke war doesn't. No. I mean, they're pushing it. They're trying to. I mean, you got that actor president out there in Ukraine begging for a no-fly zone and planes, but
he wants it. Yeah. So my thoughts, we'll go to the Ukraine mess right now. My thoughts are that there is no prospect of nuclear war there, because the Ukraine represents a perfect sandbox 2.0. If the first sandbox was Afghanistan, it was a 20-year sandbox that the military-industrial complex could make bombs and blow them up into random mountains and all these other kinds of things. The money train keeps going. Now, the Ukraine is perfect because there's all these areas. They don't care if Ukrainians or Russians get killed for the next 10 to 15 years, bogged down in a bloody civil war between the two. And they get the bonus of attacking the Russians because they've been so desperate to attack the Russians for 70 years through the Cold War and the end of the Cold War. Now they get this opportunity to kill Ruskies that all these boomer bureaucrats in Washington can't wait to do. So I don't see the prospect of any kind of nuclear war happening. I do see the prospect of a bloody civil war between, Zelensky, who is Winston Churchill, and Optimus Prime rolled into one, and fighting the Great Russian Bear for the next 10 to 12 years. What do you think, Ryan? We'll go around.
Yeah, Zelensky's an odd figure as actor, and they're building him up very heavily in the Western media. And so it's like, I don't trust Putin. I'm not a Putinophile. There's a lot of people in the alternative media that think Putin is somehow some kind of savior. He's not. His state is another little, he's a thug. His state's a thug state. I'm sorry. I don't care how many things he's done for pro-family legislation and everything else. He's not your good guy. And then Zelensky is even worse, as far as I can tell. And Ukraine is, a mafia state, really. It's the government is its own little mafia that really crushes down the lives of average people. And who's a part of that? The Bidens, Nancy Pelosi, right? These people are all a part of basically milking, the coup that happened in 2014. I know some people think that was just a blip in the radar. It was nothing really important. No, yes, it was, because Victoria Nuland is sitting there directing who will and will not be on the board of this or that thing, who will be doing this and who will be doing that. I mean, you could just look at, there's a BBC article from right around that time, 2014, that has the transcript of a leaked call with the same Victoria Nuland, where she's basically deciding these people are in, these people are out, these people will be in the government because we have decided. And then, well, what does the EU think? The guy Piot, who's on the phone with her, and she says, well, F the EU. I mean, they're creating that situation over there because it's going to benefit the neocons' interest for a long time down the road. And Zelensky is really just your puppet that's out there. He's not this great heroic guy. He's your puppet that's out there. They give you your heroes, they give you your villains, and you're supposed to root and cheer. Just like in it's really, I'm seeing 1984, and I know the word Orwellian is becoming a very overused adjective, since 2020. But it really is much like in 1984, where you put every few years you change up your heroes and villains, and everyone's supposed to love one and hate the other. Yeah. And then for that complete, but it doesn't really matter which side it is. Everybody loses, and the people in Ukraine, especially, this war, in my opinion, is absolutely phony. But the people themselves are suffering under the theater that's creating it. So I'm going to say again, it's one of those things. I've said it in another place.
Who they would.
The Klitschko piece is obviously the complicated electron.
This is what Ryan was talking about.
Especially the announcement of him as deputy prime minister. And you've seen some of my notes on the troubles in the marriage right now. So we're trying to get a read really fast on where he is on this stuff. But I think your argument to him, which you'll need to make, I think that's the next phone call we want to set up, is exactly the one you made to Yachts. And I'm glad you sort of put him on the spot on where he fits in this scenario. And I'm very glad he said what he said in response.
Good. So I don't think Cleach should go into the government. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's a good idea.
All right. That goes on for a while.
It does. And and that's not made up. That's not conspiracy theory. That actually happened. And then the Bidens are over there. And then what happens as soon as Trump starts poking into what happened in Ukraine? And I've got my various theories about that, which I'm sure nobody cares about. But what happened now, you have this massive thing. Oh, we got to impeach him over this, or impeach him the second time or whatever. Or no, that was the first time. We got to impeach him over this call in Ukraine. And that was the first time I started looking into what's going on in Ukraine. It's like, why is this so important to them that they're willing to throw this charade that's going to make them look absolutely ridiculous and make a joke of the impeachment process? And I started, seeing these kind of connections that they've been establishing in Ukraine for a while. And it's more than just putting up a little gatekeeping on the Russians over there. It's establishing the U.S. dominance over those resources in that region, as well as the other things that they have planned, for the future. So yeah, it's the whole thing's a mafia, and Biden's a big part of it, and that's why I don't trust anything that the media is going to say. No yellow and blue flags over here. Sorry. For the people, yeah, I'm praying for the people in the Ukrainian Catholic Church in Ukraine, absolutely, which is also going to suffer, by the way. The Catholic side of things always suffers. The Orthodox will suffer a little bit too, because they've got Moscow's ire because of the whole business in the Orthodox Church. But when the Patriarch gave Ukraine its own right to have its own patriarch, it's separate from Moscow. That's something that the Russian Orthodox were not happy about. And part of the reason Putin builds up the Russian Orthodox is part of the state in Russia. It's part of establishing, that his own national base, because anything Putin does is really just to get his end of the world order that all these guys are waxing poetic about in the beginning and the intro to the show. Yeah. They want that to run along a Moscow-Beijing axis rather than a Washington-London axis. But it's going to be the same thing. There's no difference in how we are going to exist under that.
Indeed, Jonathan. So you're now that we've seen a couple weeks of this Ukraine-Russian incident, things are starting to come out. Your view of the long-term ramifications between the Ukraine and Russia, because the Russians have been offering, at least in my view, covering it. Hey, you want to stop? We'll stop now. Just don't be a puppet for the West. And Zelensky gets on TV with his green tight T-shirt, and he's like, "We'll never give up and never surrender." So your thoughts, based on the first parts of this conflict, long-term nuclear war, civil war, ending it. What do you think?
Well, I think Ryan made a good point that it always ends up being bad for the Catholics. I follow a guy who's in Moscow and another one who's in St. Petersburg, and they just said the crackdown on the Catholics and their, I guess you'd say, civil liberties has been refocused, has been re-intensified recently there. But of course, the Ukrainian Catholics are suffering a lot too. And even though they've come out a little bit more feverishly in support of Ukraine, even a lot of the Ukrainian Greek Catholics who are dear friends of mine, common phrase that is used among them is "glory to the Ukraine," Slava Ukraini. I'm a little bit nervous about that movement, but look, in the long run, what's happening is, yes, Catholics are going to end up suffering. I think Ryan was right to say that it's not really going to make a huge difference for us one way or the other. But I noticed, and the guy the guy that I follow in Moscow, he went off on a little bit of a description of what was going on based on two texts that he had seen, or maybe two tweets, I think it was. And one was, he said it was from Jeffrey Tucker, that said, "So much of the present catastrophe, violence, separation, hate, tribalism, state glorification, rampant poverty, inflation, all traced most recently to lockdowns in March of 2020. And he's saying this just 2 days ago. It was this moment that unleashed this hell. That's true. And in the Off Guardian, this was a tweet then, that's what it was. The Off Guardian said, "We're going to keep saying it because it may turn out to be the most important long-term aspect of the Ukraine-Russian war. This conflict has completely destroyed the amazing cohesion that had been developing in the global resistance to authoritarian COVID-19 measures." So I think with those two tweets, there's you can kind of find where the truth lies there. And the most important thing is that, yes, there was glowing pushback. Trudeau was being humiliated by what was going on in Canada. He was bringing out all the guns and still nobody was going anywhere. And now all of a sudden you don't hear a word about it. Nobody's covering the trucker convoy in the U.S. So that was squashed in a hurry. And then I think Jeffrey Tucker, as much as I disagree with him on many other issues, rightly noted that, yes, this all began, at least you could say effectively what's happening to our ability to live the lives that we know is best or view as most conducive to a human flourishing. That's been all downhill since March 2020 as well. And yes, it was planned way in advance, but the implementation of it started with the COVID lockdowns, and The war is another effective means to keep people locked down, at least in the broader general sense of not being able to go out and experience true human flourishing. This is their way to keep us busy with something else. So that's my general thoughts on it.
So, Steve, you've been adamant since the beginning of this whole thing, and I think you've kind of echoed. Well, I've echoed what you've been saying. I've been saying since the beginning of this war is a great palate cleanser. They get to reestablish every narrative, every single thing that they kind of were losing momentum-wise with COVID, and definitely the World Economic Forum already has this planned out. And so let's get you in here and get your thoughts on it.
I can't remember which blog it was, but he said part one is over with. We're entering part two, and you're going to get just like the post we put up a couple weeks ago with 22 states, while no one was paying any attention, is enacting the digital passport, digital ID. Just like after World War I, you got the passport system. Now everybody thinks that is normal. You're going to get the passport system digitally after this thing. I mean, no one cares about Yemen getting bombed. That's still getting bombed. Israel's still bombing people. No one cares about that. It's not part of the narrative on this. You can bomb those guys. You can bomb other people. This one's being taken advantage of because everyone's in the WEF. Every player in there is part of the WEF. You're going to – what just happened yesterday? Now, let me pull that up real quick.
Well, yeah.
While we were asleep, I mean, the people in South Carolina didn't even know that their state last week issued the digital ID passport. Now we got Joe. Now we got Brandon out here. He just signed the.
This is an order that is essentially a starting place.
This is game over
for the U.S. government in terms of how it's going to approach cryptocurrency on a macro level, and not just a one-off case, and not just not just one agency's approach. The
analysis on CBDC, in particular for the use of general use, we tend to establish the equivalence with cash, and there is a huge difference there. For example, in cash, we don't know, for example, who's using a $100 bill today. We don't know who is using a 1,000 peso bill today. A key difference with the CBDC is that central bank will have absolute control on the rules and regulations that will determine the use of that expression of central bank liability.
I just don't understand how it gets to the point where
things get to terrible places one tiny step at a time. You know, if I encroach on you and I'm sophisticated about it, I'm going to encroach 2 millimeters. I'm going to encroach right to the point where you start to protest. Then I'm going to stop. Then I'm going to wait. Then you're going to calm down. Then I'm going to encroach again right to the point where you protest. Then I'm going to stop. Then I'm going to wait. And I'm just going to do that forever. And before you know it, you're going to be back 3 miles from where you started, and you'll have done it one step at a time. And then you'll go, oh, how'd I get here? And the answer was, well, I pushed you a little farther than you should have gone, and you agreed. And so then I pushed you a little farther than you should have gone again, and you agreed. And if anybody's interested in this sort of process,
we got to the end of the year pretty much before it really gets screwy. I mean, I think it was Vernon, the man in the doctor in the chair, the old man in the chair, actually said into 2022 is the time's up. Basically, there's some truth to that. Everything's speeding up rather quickly right now, especially because of this war, quote unquote, that's going on. You're getting the reset real quick now. Everything's coming down 90 miles an hour. Wait till you can't buy food. You want to see, maybe then will people start maybe not protesting, getting a little bit more uppity, because they're not right now. Even with the post about the 22 states with the digital ID, you don't hear anything about it. There's a couple people that talk about it on news. I don't even think Tucker did. I don't know. But even the cryptocurrency thing, that right there, that should be all over everyone's, maybe a Twitter feed or a Facebook feed. Local news, Fox News should be leading that off tonight. That's a big deal, but no one's really talking about it.
I did an entire segment yesterday on my show on the Barrett Brief on the Crusade channel about the enactment of this and how this is the beginning of the end for cryptos. And the problem with the crypto bros, and I love you, I have to preface every time, I love the crypto bros. The problem with the crypto bros is every time you say, oh, you can't get it, it's unactionable. Like, bro, there's $3 trillion worth of money in cryptocurrency markets right now. You don't think the federal government's going to find a way to either tax you to death or just come in and take it, or come in when they come in with a digital currency, the central digital currency note or whatever it is, and they're just going to say Bitcoin is now illegal. You have to transfer all your money into the central US digital currency, which, by the way, China already has theirs. The UK is working on theirs. It's all part of this plan to own nothing and be happy. And once again, I'm not blaming you crypto guys, because it was a good idea when it started, but so many people have voluntarily given their money to a source where they cannot access it. It is not physical. And yes, you have all the redundancies you want to talk about with it's on like 67,000 servers or whatever. Folks, when they shut it off, or where they shut off your access to it, that's it. There's no way to get it back. You have put all your faith in technology, and I love you because it was a great idea, but you have to put your stuff into textiles, food, and silver, whatever, gold, because that you can actually hold. You got to start growing food, survival gardens, whatever the case may be, because Steve is right. There is a time where the lifestyle you're used to, everybody missed this yesterday on Yahoo Finance, say goodbye to meat, because the Tyson Food and all these other guys, these big farm places have been losing money. I think they were making like 101 per head, which is a huge loss for them. So they're going to start pushing that off. Don't worry, John Kerry, Joe Biden, they're all going to eat meat. Then what is McDonald's and what is Burger King and what is KFC? All you people who love that stuff, Impossible Meat, Impossible Chicken. That's what you're getting now. And guess what? All it takes is 10 years, 5 years for our fat brothers and sisters here in these United States of Amazon to be like, hey, it's close enough. It's close enough. That's fine. And then boom, then it's tied to the currency. And now you are literally part of you are one step closer to the pods. I know Steve wants to get one thing in before I go to you, Ryan.
Oh, just the evolution part of it. All right. During the pseudo pandemic, you had people upset not using the dollar. People were saying don't use it because germs. Everyone was scared. You can't do cash. It had to be credit only.
It's coin shortage.
Everybody used to it. Don't use cash. Don't use cash. Don't use cash. Now you got what happened with the trucker thing up in Canada. You just donated to have somebody get some, stay warm. They cut you off. People on YouTube right now getting cut off PayPal. PayPal's kicking people off left and right. Some people use that to pay bills. What happened in Russia in the last couple of weeks? Visa last week, cut them off. MasterCard, cut them off. Apple Pay, Google Pay, they all cut people off there. Again, it's not going to hurt Putin. It's going to hit the little guy. What are you going to do? People were texting me up all day yesterday. Should we invest in silver and gold? Yeah, it's great if the dollar's collapsing. How are you going to exchange that with Mrs. McGillicuddy when you want eggs or something like that? It's not going to work, especially in a digital way. Act locally, think locally. You're going to have to get to localized, figure out your own currency in a sense type deal. Hence the part about breaking off from the union and get somebody in the state house that's worthy to fight about this so that you can have an established state currency maybe or a local currency. But then on the global side of things, you won't be able to buy anything because everything's going to be digital. This is going to be a complete mess in a few years.
Yeah. And unfortunately, just real quick, we found out that our reelected governor here, Greg Abbott, WEF boy, he's a World Economic Forum boy. That's why my guy Huffines and West didn't have a chance in hell. They didn't have a chance.
Nobody came out either, too, right? Yeah. How many people came out to vote?
Abbott supposedly got 1.2 million people to vote for him, and then Huffines and West, he's got 200,000. So, so it was a pretty intense one. But Ryan, your thoughts on the digital currency that the U.S. is now joining up with the UK and China and all these other ones, and your thoughts on Bitcoin and all that stuff in relation to it.
My thought on Bitcoin is, in and of itself, it's a really great idea. It's one more tool to have, but you never. I mean, my philosophy on it, anyways, you never want to put all your eggs in one basket. So it's great to have Bitcoin. It's great to use for certain things. But what happens when you need 5G internet in order to even access your Bitcoin? So it exists in this digital space. It can only be used in this digital space. What happens if that infrastructure falls apart? I wouldn't put all the money there, even though, like I said, it's great to be decentralized. It's great to have that. But you got to look to other things as well. And like I said, I don't buy into the idea that the government's not going to be able to or not going to take it. Because they have in some countries. Israel's just doing that now. They're confiscating crypto wallets. And it's like they can either lock your access to it. You go, oh yeah, you can have your digital wallet, but you got to have your national ID in order to access it to get online. Oh, and guess what? That to get that national ID, your internet ID, internet driver's license, you have to be up to date on all your jobs. What do you know? Now you can't get online anymore. Sorry. And that's the other thing too. In tandem with the CBDC, with the digital currency and giving basically the bankers life and death power over your ability to live. That's what it means. In tandem with that is also going to be the Internet Patriot Act, which is going to come out. Either they'll use a false flag, as some cyber attack will shut down a hospital and people will die, or a nuclear plant, or who knows what. And so that'll be the raison d'etre for driver's license for the internet. You'll have a brand new internet that you can't even imagine. That will be controlled at every level. You will not be able to use it unless you have your internet, your internet passport, and that internet passport will require you to do basically whatever they say you have to do. And if you don't do it, well, you don't get it, and that'll force you onto the program. And like Steve was mentioning before, while we're all looking at, I'm helping with my little Ukrainian flag in my profile. What are the state governments doing? They are literally, they are coming down and creating, or private tech is creating for even red states, a digital wallet, digital payment infrastructure that will basically take over for cash. Right? They're setting all that infrastructure in place, and it lines up again with the phony climate change stuff. Net zero means genocide. Don't forget that. When they say net zero carbon, they are saying genocide, human genocide. That is what that is. That is a destruction of 90% of the people on the planet. That's the only, and even then, you still won't get net zero carbon. But that's the only way you get there is by wiping out the human race. Because the author of all this climate change nonsense and all the man-made climate change nonsense and all the hysteria that surrounds it is the devil, because the devil hates the human race. And everything they keep coming up with is an end to human freedom and an end to human existence. Because guess what? You need carbon to live. You need carbon. You need to produce carbon. You need carbon in your fields, for your plants, for your gardens, for your animals, right? There's a great, very beneficial relationship. And the whole thing with carbon, it's made up. Carbon does not destroy the atmosphere. Carbon is not turning us into Venus. Carbon is not that is the planet into like the planet Venus. That's not how it actually works. Whatever you think about what all these scientists say, our climate model shows. Oh, by the way, I'm getting my checks from the UN and the Rockefellers and the World Economic Forum, but pay no attention to that. Yep. Because this is the science is settled. You can't say anything about it. Nobody called foul on that back then. We just kind of ignored it. And now with the jab stuff, the science is settled again. And that line is going to keep coming up, and it's going to work just like it did in the Soviet Union, where whatever the government decides to push, which is whatever the party and the financial backers of the party push through the government, that's what's going to be the science, and it will be settled. And the same thing on finance and economics. It's all settled. This is the way you have to live. You're going to get your credits a month, and that's what's allotted to you, and you don't get any more than that. And that's you're going to be and if you use them up, well, too bad. That's where it's going down the road.
John, get in here with that. What do you think? Digital ID, digital passport, cryptocurrency, all of that.
Well, the one thing that has always convinced me that crypto's not quite as secure or not quite as an easy end around for cash that some were claiming in the beginning is that effectively, yes, as Ryan said, I hate to keep just piggybacking on Ryan, but what can I do? He's bringing up the good points. The internet. If you have to access it by the internet, when Amazon Web Services, from the latest estimates I've seen, they house about 2/3 of what's being used on the internet. Amazon Web Services.
Mm-hmm. That U.S. government too.
Well, it's Amazon Web Services who has just built their latest facility right outside of DC. So yes,
the U.S. government they use all Amazon Web Services.
Yes. So I mean, you could say one and the same beast, so to speak. But with situations like that, what are you going to do? Those of us who have read, Griffin, the creature from Jekyll Island, we've been frustrated about the dollar for a long time. But what are you going to do? I mean, I hate to sound like an investment man from the 80s or 90s, but I guess since I have a lot of young kids who are going to be growing and wanting to eat more, I'm going to have to diversify. I'm not going to get rid of all my cash. I'm going to try to buy some, ammunition and some gold and some silver when I can. I don't have enough money to buy much of anything right now, but I'm going to do it when I can, and try to get maybe diversified in a few different cryptos if I ever get the time and the know-how to figure out how to do it. I may do that because I think that's probably prudent, and I should be doing it right now, I'm sure. But there's no end around for that. But it's funny. I was just listening to something that J.R. Griffith had said a while back, and he made a great point about the nature of money. And he didn't make the distinction about the quote from First Timothy, which is sometimes bastardized. It's the love of money, or the philia for money, that is the root of all evil, not money in and of itself, because money is in and of itself a medium of exchange, although it is open to luxuria, or these kind of desires that are insatiable by its very nature, right? Because when could you ever say, all right, I have enough money? It's one of those pleasures that's not like food and drink, where you say, all right, I have enough, and I literally can't pack any more in my body. That's one of the dangers of money in and of itself. But as a medium of exchange, it's part of our human nature. Like we're gonna be having this with us for a while. But in that regard, he made a good point. He said the more that money can be about a person-to-person exchange, or the more that exchanges, some sort of financial exchange, can be person-to-person. It's with someone and there's the personal, the human, the face-to-face is somehow still kept in it. Probably the better, because you're exchanging goods, you're exchanging services, you're exchanging things that are dear to you and dear to the other person, even if it's just that person needs more money to be able to buy food or whatever else that money's going to allow him to do. Or Aristotle made that distinction a long time ago. The more personal it can be, probably the better, as far as making it a real human sort of interaction financially. And that's the reason why gold and silver have been popular for so long, is find me a human that doesn't find gold and silver somewhat attractive, But it gets kind of to the heart of Ryan's point. It's a diabolical scheme they're after at root, because of the devil's longtime hatred for the human race. And so we have to fight back, I think, in ways that would both spiritually fight against Satan, and then we have to keep praying for the consecration of Russia, because that would be the one thing I think that would, spiritually red pill so many people. They would finally understand that, oh yes, they are trying to wipe us out. They do hate us with a diabolic hatred, and really it's a strong devotion to Our Lady, and it's the Catholic faith that illumines one, enlightens one to that crucial fact. Without that, you're kind of you're swimming in the mess of all the different true conspiracies that are out there. And what do? You end up drowning eventually, I think. So the faith is the one thing that's going to save us in this, in the end.
Amen to that. Steve, you have that, you put that in there about Monsignor Vigano on the Russia-Ukraine crisis.
Well, just to piggyback on Ryan and John right there, it's not in print, but the 1971 book on the World Economic Forum, on page 15, on chapter 1973, the Davos Manifesto, reiterating some of the same concepts about demographics that the 18th century scholar Thomas Malthus had expressed. The authors examined several scenarios for the global economy and outlined the choices that society, blah, 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 blah. That was the first book. So they laid the groundwork on everything that's coming up, as Ryan said, getting rid of people. Devil. It's this thing is rooted in just pure evil. But no, that was the article that Carlo Maria Vigano put out. Ryan can probably say with me on this. We both weren't big Vigano fans during the election because of the Trump love. I mean, just overbearing on it. But this article, I think, my personal humble opinion, was his best article he's written on the things that are going on overseas, the World Economic Forum's plans. It's almost like he watches shows like this, and especially Clown Planet, because he links things that I've linked for quite a while. So all his evidence is in here backed up with citations. If you haven't read it, read it, and then share it with your priest or whatever. That we need people fighting on our side we're going to get creamed, but I want to go down swinging with some kind of fair fight.
Well, we have Our Lady on our side, so we're never at a disadvantage, to be completely honest. We have Our Lady, we have the saints, we have our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. As long as we reorient the fight to make sure that the order is correct. John, you want to get in before we move on?
Yeah, just something that I've been teaching. I've been teaching on the Gospel of St. John this week, and something came up in regard to the Pharisees of our Lord's day being called the progeny of Satan, the offspring of Satan, and how they're of their father, the devil, who lied from the beginning, always is a liar. That's the one thing I think you can trace with all of these actors in the Great Reset, is that they are habitually lying. And in fact, you know what? It's great that Steve read that excerpt from Malthus. He was a liar. You can say a lot of the research came out later that clearly disproved what he was suggesting, but there was already stuff in his day. And I've read sources they make it clear that he knew better. So was probably encouraged by someone that had remunerated him very well, very handsomely, that his models were just basically falsified. I mean, it's based on lies. So this is diabolical, and the stream that you can follow through it all is that they lie. And when they lie, you can call it morally. You can say that's a lie because they knew better. They knew the truth, and they spoke against it anyway. They said something that was clearly contrary anyway. And even if, let's just say, I mean, we all break down and we have our weak moments, they never repent of it. That's one reason I continue to go back and watch people like Tucker Carlson, is that he can say, I'm sorry, I missed this one, or I was calling people conspiracy theorists who were right about this all along. You want to find people like that who can actually admit that they were wrong. Hopefully it's not too habitual. You don't want them to be wrong over and over again. But that's a clear sign that they're not on the diabolic train, because they're not willfully lying to you over and over again and then just never admitting the fact. But that's the diabolical strain, is the lying.
Speaking of diabolical things, the created crisis in Russia and the Ukraine, on top of the created energy crisis that the regime in DC is determined to get to their net zero, which Ryan was talking about, which they're saying a lot now, because gas prices, I don't know about you folks, but here in the great Republic of Texas, we're over $4 a gallon in the state. And gas prices, I believe, have risen 75 cents since Friday of last week. And the response from Biden or Buttigieg or Psaki is one of two things. It's Putin's fault, or just go buy an electric car, you pleb. One or the other. And so we're seeing this real diabolical nature of the elite's absolute disdain for you and I, because there are ways. Yes, the Keystone Pipeline. Yes, the fact that in East Texas alone, there's enough oil in East Texas to power the U.S. for 100 years. Between that and the Barnett Shale we have just in this state, the fact that we have these people lying. They are lying to you when they're like, there's nothing we can do about it. There's nothing we can do about it because Putin's fault. And yes, gas prices are, it's a real pain to see at the pump, but that energy goes into heating homes, producing food, and really is the next wave of this genocidal event that we're seeing. And people just are like, I can't believe I got to pay this much money in gas. Yes, that's terrible. Yes, it's eating it's taking a chunk out of my wallet as well. But y'all got to realize this is making wheat more expensive. This is making everything more expensive. And there are so many people, Steve said, it's a mess that people are just going to walk into at whatever point this really hits. And it's just another attack on the human being, on the human population. So gas prices and their effect. I mean, yes, we can easily just go red meat. This is terrible about gas prices. But the overall branching effect that the self-imposed energy strain that is being put on us, Ryan.
It fits in entirely with the World Economic Forum goals of the you'll own nothing and be happy. To make you happy, you got to start missing it and be thankful for what little you get. And so everything that's going on, it's another reason I absolutely distrust every single thing that's going on in the Ukraine, for example, because they, 30% of the world's wheat between Ukraine and Russia. Wheat futures are exploding. They're not sure wheat will be available, this year for purchase. That's how bad it's getting. By the end of the year, a lot of analysts in the food markets are worried wheat will not be available for purchase, right? And the sanctions don't help. And you think of anywhere else, you have in the UK, farms are being shut down. The British government is literally, I'm sorry, I used that word wrong again. The British government is actually trying to offer farmers money to stop farming, as we're on the cusp of one of the greatest famines in the history of the human race. And I've been talking about this, and people are saying, nah, it's not going to happen. Oh, our food supply is going to be fine. That could never happen, that we will cease to be able to produce food. Well, guess what? And so all I can say is, the food prices are going to go through the roof, just like the gas prices are going. And now if you talk to people who survived the Great Depression, who lived on farms or like smaller farms, they didn't have a lot of gas to drive everywhere. They had to hook up a plow on their horse again, but they ate, and they didn't suffer the way people did in cities. And because you didn't have suburbs the way you do now. And so that's suburbs are a thing from the devil anyway, but moving on, and the thing is, you can grow food anywhere. So don't freak out if you only have a half acre in your backyard, or if you live in an apartment and you don't have a way. Yes, you do. There are all sorts of ways you can grow potatoes by stacking up tires, stacking up planters, stacking up whatever. There's ways to grow a lot of potatoes, something, so you don't have nothing, because even if it's not enough, something is better than nothing. You can grow food in all sorts of places. And there's people doing YouTube videos on how to do that in other places. Find out, learn. All right, because I don't know anything about this stuff. And somehow yet I raise animals. I butcher lambs. I'm not there in the pig yet. I have someone else do that. But sheep, goats, etc. I can raise them and produce my own meat. If I had more land and I had more sheep, we could be eating that all year. Right. And, I don't. And so whatever you find, what's going to work for you, smaller places, you can work with chickens, and chickens are great even for your natural area. Right. You can work with so many different things to grow food. And that's what you need to do. They centralized us all into the centralized food system. And now they're pulling the plug on that whole centralized system, and it's all going down. Don't believe in the system. Don't trust that you will go to the grocery store and there will be food there. Start planning that there will not be, and what can I possibly do to provide when there won't be? So I don't want to be doom and gloom. It is pretty gloomy outlook, really, for the way of life we have been used to. But it's like that line in Lord of the Rings where Gandalf says that none may now live as they have lived, because the catastrophic nature of what was all going on in the world. No one will be able to live as they have lived, because it's going to change everything, and you've got to be able to meet the challenge, or else get swept away by it. And so you can do it. God didn't put you here, so necessarily to be swept, or at least not to be swept away in a state of sin. God puts you on this earth in this time for a reason, and you need to figure out what it is you can do to make that happen. And you can do it. A lot of people, especially my generation out in New England, I was raised with a can't-do mentality. Oh, just call someone else to do it. No, you don't have to do that. And I've had to overcome that at every stage of my life. You can, if I can do it, any idiot can do it. We'll just put it that way.
Yeah. So we got some videos here from Steve.
Some comments from people we've met at gas stations today. One woman saying, "I just never imagined to see the cost of gas be this high." Another said, "It's a huge stressor to my financial situation, a huge stressor. It's kind of like something I've stressed about, like during the day, will I be able to afford gas? How much money do I have?" What is the White House, what is the president's message to Americans who are going to the gas station today and seeing prices so high?
The president's message is that he's going to do everything he can to reduce the impact on the American people, including the price of gas at the tank. What is also true is that because of the actions of President Putin, because he invaded a sovereign country, that created instability in the markets. That is something the president talked about even before Russia and President Putin moved forward with their actions. But we have already taken...
I found a link before I hit play again. There was a link with like Canada. They use like 2% of oil from Russia. This is manufactured.
Steps. The president has already taken steps. Historic release.
At the pump a lot higher, Kate, but as you mentioned, people we've spoken to over the last couple weeks, they're okay paying higher prices if it means holding Russia accountable for what they are doing in Ukraine. But these prices are likely going to creep higher, Kate. We'll see how they feel in the next week or so. Kate?
Yeah, and the big question, the big unknown is, do any of these moves change Putin's behavior, change the way he is acting right now, what he's.
Oh, that wasn't it? Whoops, my fault. I added the wrong one. Hold on.
Home at the pump or so.
Not only are gas prices on the rise, they are now the most expensive they've ever been in U.S. history. How is it affecting you?
It's killing me.
That number depresses me, dude.
It's putting a strain.
I have to consider less shopping.
I take the train more.
I might charge people to get in my car.
I don't drive more than 50 miles in a week.
We're making less money.
I make less money.
A lot of bills and food and gas, everything's going up.
I'm not able to afford to get gas sometimes, so I believe my...
John Rambo.
You think migration has been a problem in Europe from the Syrian war, or even from what we see now? Where do you see 100 million people for whom the entire food production capacity has collapsed?
And last one.
Under President Biden and Vice President Harris's leadership, we're pressing the accelerator to reach a zero emissions future sooner than most people thought. EPA's two announcements today are about seizing the opportunity that technology presents and driving towards a cleaner, healthier, more just future for all of our children. The first of these is EPA's Clean Truck proposal. 72 million people are estimated to live near truck freight routes in America, and they're more likely people of color and those with lower income. Those overburdened communities are directly exposed to pollution that leads to respiratory and cardiovascular problems, among other serious and costly health effects. As directed by President Biden's executive order, EPA is proposing new, ambitious standards to significantly reduce emissions from smog and soot-forming nitrogen oxides from heavy-duty gasoline and diesel engines used on the nation's roads and highways. This will ensure that the portions of the heavy-duty fleet that continue to rely on the internal combustion engine during the transition to cleaner alternatives will deliver much-needed protections to our most vulnerable communities.
Just get these books. It'll tell you exactly their game plan on it. It's all about the whole thing. The 2020 was all about this nonsense. Here's a link. Let me get the share screen up. One more thing. And that wasn't it. Wayback Machine. Absolute zero. I'll put this in the show notes below. Scroll through this. See this is a blueprint of what's coming on. Flying. All remaining airports closed 2030. Shipping, all shipping declines to zero. I mean, that's just some of it. You think you're going to drive? Fossil fuels completely phased out. Absolute zero 2050. Electric planes may fly. You want to get on an electric airplane? Boogie, woogie, woogie, woo. Yeah. 2050. Some naval ships operate with nuclear power and it may allow electric power. Heating power for 60% of today's use. Well, that's nice. They get the 100%.
Yep, they will always have that.
For 2050 with today's technology. Look through this. This is their blueprint that's coming down the pipe. So if you're wondering, I think we're on like page 43 right now. But I mean, check this out. It'll be in the show notes. This is not made up stuff.
Yep, absolutely. This is definitely something they are looking for. And the real problem is there's a lot of people that think they're just one election away from having this all reversed, or maybe just get Trump back in office, and that's it. We're just gonna be fine, folks. Local as possible. Ryan was talking about it. Gardening. Go back to the earth. Right, it's time for you to go back to the earth and do what you can to get ahead of this, because John Kerry literally he let it slip. Their fantasy. Can you imagine 100 million people trying to find food while they're up in their ivory towers eating filet mignon and whatever else they want to eat? Watching us, everybody references 1984. Guess what? There's another book series you can now reference called The Hunger Games. You know what? Joke as much as you want because it's here. Which district do you live in? Huh? Which district do you want to live in? Right?
Yeah.
Everybody used to be like, I'm 3, I'm 12. Yeah, well, guess what?
In
You're
your
in
zone
5, right? You're in District 106, and your food rations come in 2 weeks. Good luck.
And they put stuff like that even in kids shows. Like, I don't know if anyone saw the Lego movie. I really enjoyed that movie, actually.
Yeah.
It was a fun little movie. But they do this thing where one of the Lego characters is explaining to a normie guy living in the Lego City universe where everything's controlled and surveilled. And they throw in all kinds of Illuminati and Masonic symbolism, which I still can't tell if that was a joke or a troll. But then
could be
both. Could be both. I mean, it was funny. I laughed at it. And sometimes they know these things are out there and they put them in there as a joke. And the people making the movie, for example. But there's one part where she explains how President Business, who's the president, like, he controls all the Lego worlds all around. He was confused by all the pieces being able to cooperate with each other. And so he set up barriers. And when they show a picture of one of these little robot Legos looking up at the barriers, and it's a map, an exact map of the U.S. FEMA zones. And I don't think that was put in there by accident, whoever put that in there. So it's like they do stuff, and that's seeding the narrative or predictive programming. They add things like that in there because guess what? The CIA has people in Hollywood on the payroll. Not because the CIA is writing every movie, because they have people who insert ideas. And that's been going on for a very long time. And that's actually very well documented, the role of intelligence agencies in Hollywood. Because culture, and this is why I actually do spend the time to watch, when my time allows, certain pop culture things, because guess what? The media and the culture, that is a key into where things are ultimately going to try to direct things, because art is the medium that expresses culture, and it's a medium that can also be used to control and influence culture to a very large degree. And if you're not aware of that, I'd start looking start with Marshall McLuhan and move on from there.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if Ryan's still with us or if he's not, but
Jonathan,
there he is. There he is. The response to John Kerry, just telling, like, just salivating at 100 million people just wandering about trying to find food while he's up in his private jet. Your thoughts, John?
Well, it's always the former Catholics who are the worst. Only someone like that could be that diabolic, falling from such grace and be like that. Not sure how authentically Catholic he was raised, but in any case. But at least they know where it really hits us. I mean, they've been doing bad things to the air, the soil, and most especially, and I think easiest to prove, the water in, at least in America, for a long, long time. Oddly enough, that the water in most European countries is a whole lot better. But I mean, they know how it's going to, I think, immediately affect most people, and that is with food, because it's such a shocker. Like, if you go to a store and there's nothing on the shelves, that's going to either get you right into obedience, or you're going to, most people, the average undisciplined person is going to immediately freak out and make some unwise decision of some sort that's going to allow them to then further enslave you, right? And that's why, hey, it's good that we're talking about this during Lent, because the more we embrace the church appointed times of penance, it shows that we can follow obediently Holy Mother Church when it's when that's what we're supposed to be doing. So we know how to put our body into shape, but at the same time, we know when we have to exercise strength, which is what our Lord did when he told the devil no. That reading that kind of gets Lent started off for us by telling the devil no, 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 no. So if we combine those two, the self-discipline, and then like fighting back in the sense that Ryan mentioned about teaching ourselves how to produce our own food and take care of that food, then once it's produced as well, we'll be in as good a shape as we can be.
Indeed. Steve, thoughts on that? I mean, I know you started this whole thing off with the page documents and everything else. Do you have any kind of final thought on that before we move on, since we kind of indirectly started with
we're just totally, we're going to get creams. We just need to fight it no matter what for our kids, and wake up anybody we can. I mean, I wish we could get the church leaders behind us, more of them at least, just to have a fair fight, I guess. I mean, there was a in Garanger on St. John of God. He mentions philanthropy. You think of Gates when I was reading it. basically being useless because you're just there. You're using people and making people think that you're doing something good. Whereas saints like John of God was actually doing real love of other people and an individual level. So like we got to act locally, think locally. I mean, people disconnect from reality on the sense they don't even know their neighbors, much less, help a brother out down the street or around the corner. Yeah, these guys, these globalists, I mean, if we could be globalists as well in a good way by converting our neighborhoods, we don't have to go missionary work in Vietnam to do it. Get your neighbor, get your family on board. And what better time than Lent to drop down on your knees and do penance before you have, I don't know, eternal penance of ration food and better get used to not eating a lot coming up soon, or not doing much, or maybe not living with the electricity. Because again, when you don't have your jabs up and you need that passport to get you, pay your bills, and it's all digital. How you gonna cut that? How you gonna cut your air on or your heat on? Or these are real life things that people aren't thinking about. That when it comes, it'll be too late. Katie bar to the door type deal stuff.
So with that in mind, we'll wrap this up real quick. I want everybody to give an update on Lent and maybe a little Catholic tip of the week going through. We're already a week into Lent. So Ryan, your thoughts on Lent so far, tip of the week going forward.
The church, if sometimes what happens is people will pick up things that are too much for them, and then they slip up a day or two, like, oh man, well, I guess that's over. Wait, why? I mean, it's like you failed in something you meant to. There might have been good reasons for it, or maybe just lazy. Pick it up, especially now. Just say, all right, well, I skipped that one, but I'm going to keep going. Don't stop with it. And then the second thing is, and I try to keep reinforcing this, the spirit of, because I advocate picking up very ancient, very hefty penances as far as food and drink go. But remember that the spirit of Lent it's not a, the church wasn't getting in on diet grifting back in the day. It's not about losing weight in terms of, you will lose weight if you're doing things well, and that's on the physical side of it, but it's about losing the spiritual weight. Mend your hearts, not your garments. That's the idea, the principle behind everything in Lent, is that the Lord wants your heart to include him, so we get less worldly. That's the idea about it. And so we're supposed to lose that spiritual weight that's weighing us down, so that we can be better. So that if you're fasting, let's say you're doing all the rigor that the Eastern Church advocates for, or puts together for the ancient fathers and their tradition, this full vegan diet without even olive oil or wine during the week, and fasting every day. Minus the weekends, you get your wine and your olive oil back, but you're still not eating fish and you're still not eating meat and whatnot on the weekends, even on Sundays, right? And so if you do all that perfectly, and you're even keeping the spirit of that by not, substituting things in here and there, or even if you're doing a bread and water all Lent, right? And then you are miserable with everybody who's around you. You're crabby. You're yelling at your kids more. You're not doing it right. You need to find something where you're giving up things and becoming less worldly and less attached to your own comfort and your own things, so that you can become a better Catholic. You're more charitable. You're more likable. What is it that our Lord says? It's the reading on Ash Wednesday in the traditional Roman rite. I'm not sure what they do in the new rite, but wash your face. Don't be all sunk in and sad and mope around. Oh, I'm fasting. Wash your face. Be happy. Be joyful, because it's a joyful thing to give up things for the Lord and become less worldly. And that's the whole goal of Lent.
Jonathan, quick thoughts on Lent, how it's going so far, and any advice for anybody going out there?
Yeah, I think it's going well for the church, because we just had another bishop who was rather courageous in the way, I think so far there in Puerto Rico, who stood up for what is good, true, and beautiful, at least as far as he had understood it so far in regard to the vaccines, things like that, and then even not of his own will resigning his post when asked because of canonical justice. So I think that's something to say praise God, thanks be to God for that. The other thing I'd add about how to push forward, at least something that's helped me a lot, is to in the midst of giving up some things that I'm rather attached to in food and drink is to have before me to offer that not solely for my own spiritual advancement, but also for someone who's dear to me and who I know really needs it because I see them in whatever sort of difficulty they have or whatever just overwhelming daily load they have, whether it's my wife, primarily my kids, but then also some old friends and family members who aren't Catholics and but whom I wish all the best and hope that they will convert soon. So offering your sufferings like that also in a spirit for the conversion of poor sinners, as our lady said, most clearly there at Fatima, it helps to then get through that immediate pain of the detachment. Because usually within a few days, that immediate desire for the things like food and drink can wane a good bit. But to persevere also takes that extra grace. So just offering it up for someone who's dear to you, I found is also a good way to help persevere in the fight.
Excellent, Steve.
Oh man, well, the whole penance thing. You read Orange 8 the last couple of weeks. You're going, man, is he calling me a pansy? A coward? And all. It really does some good. If you play ball and you got a good coach who always tries to put you, he reminds me of a good coach on a spiritual front, just pushing you forward. You're like, hey, these guys did this. You can do this too. You think about like last night, I was taking the garbage out and I was thinking, man, it's cold out here, and I was barefooted. And today's the Holy 40 Martyrs of Sebastian. You're going, how did they do that? How did they stand on ice or in the water like that, freezing for how long before they died? And I'm just complaining about what 45, 50 degree weather, stone cold on there. I'm like, man, am I weak? So it's just one of those keeping your mind right, I guess. I mean, trying to do the holy hours at the adoration at the home of Father Mateo, but putting in the Holy Face litany and chaplet at the end, just kind of like, hey, we're on a global communist thing. Let's put some arrows and daggers at the commies in that, as our Lord said in that apparition. So keep pounding away, as we say down here.
All right, folks. So I think one last thing. We got to get the cry room in real quick. So I hope you guys have your saint and sinners ready to go. Ryan, saint of the week, and then cry room.
I didn't have either prepared. So been busy. I had a talk last night that I gave to a young adult group in Washington, which actually was excellent. So I failed. So I failed to prepare. Really,
you don't have one we can skip this week.
I'll come back to them.
Yeah, we can come back. John, do you have a saint of the week and a cry room?
Yeah, for saint of the week, I'd say Saint Jerome, because he loved his penances. Like it seems almost like he had a relationship with his penances, and living the life he did there in the desert. He's a good one to go to, I found, for help in persevering during Lent. So Saint Jerome, it's hard to read a single paragraph of Saint Jerome's without some mention of the benefits of fasting or other sorts of penances. So there's that. For the cry room, yes, because I follow the Orthodox scene pretty closely. I'd say Metropolitan Hilarion, who people have criticized Patriarch Kirill there in Russia, rightfully so, former KGB guy. I mean, he's probably not a very good man at all. But Metropolitan, on the other hand, Hilarion is seen by many as just this cultured guy and very circumspect with his words. But he is circumspect with his words. He hasn't said a single thing about the war. That may end up being, just his own diplomat. He is head of their kind of foreign relations and all. But the fact that he hasn't even really addressed it at all and just said that this is really going to harm people. This is going to destroy a lot of Russians as well. It's going to harm a lot of Russians. He hasn't said a word about it publicly, whereas at least Patriarch Kirill has spoken out publicly about it, even though he's kind of siding with the Russian government. I'm putting him in the cry room. So Hilarion, seen by many as just this very cultured guy. I think he's showing himself to be a coward right now and not saying that what is going on is going to be harmful to everybody, both Ukrainians and Russians. All right, and then I bet he has some ideas about why it would be harmful. He should say it publicly. So he's in the cry room.
All right, Steve.
I'm going with Thug Nasty for the saint of the week. Thug Nasty, an MMA guy, he comes out saying, "I'm not going to war over there for some rich billionaire. I'm I will be on the front line when they come to Arkansas, and I will defend my country with pride, and I would be glad to die for Arkansas. So I saw that. I was like, hey, that's, for an MMA guy getting his pounded in the head all the time. I was like, hey, there you go. Cry room, I'll go with Brandon that, he re-signed the Rona emergency order. Nobody heard that one come through. He re-signed it. It'll be re-signed just like 9/11 has been signed for the last 20 years. And also going with the signing the executive order on the digital currency.
All right, for me, to give Ryan a couple more minutes, I am going to put Ron DeSantis as my saint of the week for the House Bill 1557, Don't Say Gay bill, which is giving conservatives the opportunity to push the ball forward.
Is it in the bill?
Yeah.
Is it in the bill?
Exactly. And the idea that now if you can actually confront people who are saying, oh, well, it's abusive and all these other kinds of things because they haven't read the bill, and you can say, guess what? You're a pedophile. You're a groomer. Or if you support pedophiles or groomers if you oppose House Bill 1557. And I think conservatives really should, and Catholics should grab the ball and just run with it because they've controlled that narrative way too long. So I think this bill gives us a chance to kind of regain that narrative. It's just a question of whether you're brave enough to do it or not. And for my sinner, it's Pete Buttigieg with his essentially let them eat cake moment, even though that's not correct. I understand that Marie Antoinette was saddled with that, even though it's not correct. But historically speaking, popularly speaking, he essentially said, poors go buy a Tesla, you bunch of plebs. Who cares about gasoline? So he's my sinner. He goes into the cry room. So now that you've had enough time, Ryan, who do you got?
Just clarify for me the saint of the week thing. We're talking about people now in our current climate that did something decent. And
Thug Nasty isn't in the calendar.
Okay. No, Ron DeSantis isn't there yet.
Yeah, because Jonathan mentioned Saint Trim, and one time I mentioned a saint in the past. So I wasn't sure. So it's people now, not
actual, not actual saints. It's not good. You want to throw one in, like John wants to throw one in. That's not fine. That's absolutely fine. Yeah. So, but if you want to throw in a, like Ron DeSantis is not one, neither is Bryce Mitchell or so.
Right. Dang. Let's see. Yeah. Who am I going to pick for that?
Hey, say Tucker because he admitted he was calling people.
Yeah, that's right. That I was thinking it. You might as well. Tucker admitting that I would say Tucker just for having that frank admission that we would have called this a conspiracy theory, except it's true. Who would have thought? So definitely give him credit for that. As far as although I'm coming up real quick for it, my cry room. I'll put it up on here if I can get it up right. Okay, Screen Rant and Jar Jar Abrams. I'm going to put that up there. Why they have this ran with this asinine article? Why the Star Trek reboot cast is better than the original series?
Yeah,
thank you for creating more independent pop culture channels on YouTube to mock Hollywood. And so I'm going to put that Screen Rant up there, just part of the whole Access Media. Yes, man, we're going to promote whatever Hollywood's doing, and in this further move to we're out of ideas and we've got nothing, so we're just going to keep remaking the old stuff. And I don't want to let my biases go too much. I don't like Chris Pine as Kirk. He's not Kirk to me, but whatever. The movies that even if he was good, the movies themselves that they're producing now are all terrible, and they're all pillaging stuff from the originals for the little nostalgia bait. Oh, see, we're going to do this now. The whole point of J.J. Abrams blowing up the Star Trek canon was to create this new world so they could have new adventures. And instead, they're just pillaging off all the old adventures. I mean, come on, really? Because they have no ideas. All they can do is destroy what more talented and intelligent people have already crafted and put together in the Access Media, and groups like Screen Rant, who I put in the cry room this week, are the ones trying to promote that. Yeah, and what you're doing is better because, the Emperor's New Clothes are great. And so pox upon you all.
Yeah. All right, folks. That's going to do it for us here from News from the Pew. If you like what you heard, subscribe, share, and like. And so we can grow our audience. And we look forward to talking to you next week. And now, always and forever, Viva Cristo Rey.
Here we go.
Love affair, gasoline, and forcing drivers. abandoned gas-powered vehicles. No matter where you live, gas prices are going up.
You took me for a ride and now we're lost. I'm choking on your pollution trip.
You're making me cough, you're turning me off. I'm breaking this relationship.
Gasoline, gasoline, you're driving